Today, we have a guest who specializes in brand digital design, working on both the user interface and the user experience to help bring an easier Web3 experience to the mainstream. Here to talk about that and the future of crypto, let's say hello to digital designer Neil Shankar. Neil, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, totally. So I've been following your TikToks. I follow you on TikTok. I mean, you make some really good content there. I've been following you for a few weeks. I just want to know, you're specializing in digital design. Just to kick things off, what does that mean? Can you explain to me what you do and how you got into the space?
Yeah, totally. And by the way, thank you for the compliment coming from the TikTok goat himself. But yeah, I actually started off in this space in computer science. And like many designers with a technical background, I realized that there's this whole field called UI UX design. And as I got deeper and deeper into front-end programming, I realized how much my passion really lied in design. So I started learning more about graphic design fundamentals, typography, motion design, and really started getting immersed in the creative side of it. And now I'm sort of on the edge where I am a brand designer. So the work that I do with tech companies involves conveying their brand or relating their brand in the most easy to understand way possible. Especially in the Web3 NFT space, we have a lot of complex concepts at play. So it's distilling that down oftentimes into a visual language and representing the company in the best way possible. But everything I do sort of rests on that technical background that I have, being able to understand the actual technology under the surface.
Yeah, and I want to kind of get into that a little bit because your commentary on the digital design and the brand designs is so interesting on TikTok. So I want to kind of dive into the Web3 element, the Web3 space, because that's kind of what our show is around. How important do you think good branding or user experience is for bringing Web3 to the masses? Because the thing that I always think about is like, I dabble in crypto. I've invested in crypto. I've interacted with Web3 apps, but it's always kind of scary because it's like, there's so much stuff that I feel like could go wrong, whether it's like, oh my God, I copied the wrong character to my MetaMask wallet or something. Am I going to lose all my crypto because it's taking too long to transfer from one wallet to another? How do you feel like for good branding, or what's missing there for a good user experience?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, it is very terrifying. And I think one of the interesting things that we're seeing, given that we're all so early in this space, is that, so me personally, I've been heavy into NFTs for about a year now. And in the year that I've been immersed in this space, you can really see the strong brands already forming and getting confidence. So if I think of a brand like MoonPay, for instance, MoonPay is just one example of what I think is a really strong brand in this space. Already people have confidence in MoonPay because of their branding, because of their team, because of their visibility and transparency. And so take any Web3 NFT brand that you like, whether it's something huge like Bored Ape Yacht Club or something smaller like a community that I'm interested, just to name a few, like Crypto Coven and Chain Runners. And I don't say that to shill, I'm just excited about these communities. Mm-hmm. Something that really draws people into the space is strong branding.
Yeah, and I guess how do you develop that branding? Because right now I think mostly it's typically been through Twitter, Discord, Twitter Spaces, kind of getting the community engaged. But it's still pretty niche right now. How do you think we get this to the mainstream? Is it still kind of starting small and kind of hoping that you kind of continue growing this community through Twitter and Discord, or is there any other way? Are we going to see Super Bowl commercials for NFTs one day? Like, where do you see this going?
Yeah, it might be. There's a concept in branding and computer science called abstraction. And I think that's really, really pertinent in this space, which is that to a user, whatever's happening under the surface is abstracted to them. So it's kind of like a black box. So if I take another strong NFT Web3 brand like Ledger, if I put $10 into my Ledger and write down my seed phrase somewhere secure, what's actually happening under the surface is unknown to me. I just have to trust the brand and trust the product that they're doing something securely. So I think the more and more that we can abstract away the complexities and the terrifying parts of this space and let the user just rest their confidence in strong brands and good products, I think that's the way that things will go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's definitely like the next step to get, people like my parents who just can barely log into their email without like freaking out. Like how do we get them involved? And I think you're right. The user interface and making it to where like they trust what's happening in the back end, to where they're not thinking about it or worried about it. So I know you guys are working on that problem, and I'm hoping that we have really good apps and really good interfaces moving forward. But on the flip side, though, what do you think are some mistakes or approaches that brands might have taken that have been bad? I think about like maybe some poorly launched NFTs from big brands that are just trying to like get their name out there and they just attach themselves to some NFTs, but there isn't any utility or anything. Do you think there's some mistakes that big brands are doing, or just any brands in general that are doing with the Web3 space?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see sometimes like a critique of branding, or as sometimes called blanding, is that it's just a layer of packaging on top of the actual product or service. And when it works really well, those things are really, really tightly intertwined. When it doesn't work so well, you can see that there's a big disconnect. So if you take an NFT launch that went quite poorly, like the Metaverse, for instance, which was a bit overhyped, and you could see there were some problems under the surface, you can see that it really was strong branding when they hadn't had all those pieces figured out. And sometimes, especially in the Web3 and NFT space, that brand is really closely tied to certain individuals. So when you have public individuals, founders, community advocates who lose the public's trust, which we might be seeing with the Terra Luna fiasco, and we've seen several times before. When people start to lose trust in the founder, you can see the brand starts to tank as well.
Absolutely. So it kind of goes back to like being, your branding is built on trust. You got to continue maintaining that trust. You don't want to have, you want to make sure that whatever you're building on top of is trustworthy, so people don't get rugged and essentially maybe ultimately leave the space completely because they just have a bad experience. Terra Luna being a very good example of that. I want to pivot a little bit to talk about the Web 2, Web 3. You kind of see this battle. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. You see these Web 3 maxis that are just like, oh, Web 3 is the future. Like, this is going to replace everything. And then you have some people that are anti-Web 3, kind of like, hey, Web 3 is like, it's just nothing crazy. It's useless. Where do you lie on that spectrum? And do you think that, are we going to have a world where Web 2 and Web 3 are coexisting, or is it going to be like Web 3 decentralization in the next 10 years? Like, I'd like to get your take on that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, when I really started thinking about the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, I became interested in the founders and the people in this space who I've been following for a long time before any of us knew that Web 3 existed. So someone that comes to mind is Dom Hoffman, who's known as the co-founder of Vine. Someone who's had a big tech following for a long time. Kevin Rhodes is another one. He was the co-founder of Dig way back in the day. And now these people are prominent names in the Web3 space. So that's a big vote of confidence to me when you have established tech founders and some would say like tech personalities, strong personalities, who are very confident in the space and leading the way. Then I see, okay, this isn't just a one-hit wonder. This isn't just a fad. These are people who clearly know what they're doing and are telling us that this is the future. So that tells me that I think there is promise in Web3, and there might not be such a difference between Web 2 and Web 3 if these Web 2 founders are really excited about it.
You make a good point about, Kevin Rose is a really big example. I mean, Dig was like one of the first websites I remember spending a lot of time on back in the day, and he's like a huge player in Web3. I think he's part of the what's that Moonbirds or the NFT project that Kevin Rose. Yes. So yeah, that's a very good point. I'll end with this question. Do you think that we'll see Web3/blockchain technology being embraced by any major brand right now? I'm thinking of like the Amazons, the Apples of the world, or things like that. Are we going to see these major tech companies ever embrace it? Whether it's just maybe like Apple having a native crypto wallet, or maybe having some sort of NFT wallet or things like that. That to me is going to be a game-changing moment if one of these legacy brands that like billions of people use every day and normal people use every day. Do you see that happening in the future? Or do you think they're just going to kind of continue printing money because they have a really good business and not just mess with this world at all?
Sure. I think the answer is absolutely yes. A lot of these big brands will embrace the new technologies, but I'd be interested to see it done in a meaningful way. So for instance, we already have some big brands dabbling in, like Adidas had their Into the Metaverse launch around Christmas time last year. Whether or not that's a meaningful contribution to the space is up for debate. But yes, they've checked off the box that they're in the space. So I think we'll see a lot of brands starting to check off the box, but I'm really interested to see who's going to meaningfully contribute.
Yeah, that's very true. Because right now it's just kind of like, it doesn't feel meaningful. It kind of just feels surface level where it's like, oh, Budweiser is putting their name to this like random NFT horse game. It's like, what are they actually doing when it comes to like actually embracing Web3? I think you're right. Right now, it's still very surface level, and there hasn't been any big push by any major company to kind of dig deeper. I know we're seeing some of these luxury brands kind of embrace metaverse stuff. Nike is trying to embrace Web3 with NFTs and things like that. But I think you're right. It still feels surface level. Still feels very early. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I know that smart people like you are working on it. I encourage everyone to check out your TikTok, man. Again, I love your TikToks. I love your commentary on all the stuff that you do on TikTok. And I really, really appreciate you being on the show today.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching, everybody. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and be sure to tune in tomorrow.